Daniel Mercer's name would later be whispered with dread across Michigan, a man whose calculated violence turned an ordinary morning commute into one of the darkest tragedies in the state's history. On November 14th, he emerged from the shadows along Interstate 96, armed with a rifle and a plan designed to create mass destruction. What began as a normal rush hour quickly spiraled into a nightmare of fire, twisted steel, and terror, all captured on chilling bodycam footage that revealed the raw chaos in real time. The I-96 Mass Casualty Incident was not random, it was deliberate, brutal, and unforgettable. This is the story of how one man's obsession with control shattered lives in seconds, and how the courage of ordinary people was tested in the face of calculated evil. The morning began with a calm that gave no warning of the horror waiting ahead. The sun rose over Interstate 96, spilling light across miles of asphalt as cars streamed steadily in both directions. Commuters sipped coffee from travel mugs, radio stations buzzed with traffic updates and morning shows, and families headed toward errands and appointments. The highway, always busy, carried the rhythm of routine. Nothing seemed out of place, nothing suggested danger. For those on the road, it was simply another day, another drive, yet hidden from view, tucked just beyond the line of trees and concrete. Someone had already chosen this moment to strike. He had studied the road for weeks, watching from a distance, learning the patterns. He noted the times when the traffic was thickest and when visibility was low, and he waited until the perfect morning when everything aligned. To passing drivers, he was invisible, but to him, they were targets lined neatly before his eyes. The quietness of his hiding place gave no hint of his intention, and each passing car drew him closer to unleashing the violence he had been planning in silence. The details of his preparation would later shock investigators. He had mapped escape routes, cached supplies in nearby woods, and even rehearsed his movements to make sure there would be no mistakes. He was not acting in anger or sudden impulse. He was acting out of cold calculation. His choice of location, a curved section of the highway where sightlines were limited, ensured that once panic began, it would ripple outward uncontrollably. He wanted a chain reaction, and he wanted chaos. To him, the drivers were faceless, nameless strangers who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But in his mind, there was no wrong place. This had been designed to capture as many lives as possible, to turn a single moment into a scene of devastation. As the morning traffic thickened, the stage was set. Trucks rumbled beside sedans, motorcycles weaved carefully through lanes, and families with children in the back seats rode unknowingly into danger. Every second that ticked by pulled them closer to the hidden threat crouched in wait. It was only a matter of minutes before ordinary life shattered into chaos, and the quiet hum of morning turned into a roar of terror that would be remembered for years. The I-96 Mass Casualty Incident was about to begin, and for those caught in its path, there was no warning, no escape, and no way to imagine what was coming. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came just after 8 in the morning. A single crack rang out above the hum of engines and the steady rush of traffic. Most drivers assumed it was nothing more than a blown tire, a sound that was common on highways, but within seconds, chaos erupted. A bullet tore through the windshield of a small sedan, and the driver lost control, veering into the next lane. The impact sent another vehicle spinning across the road, creating a ripple of collisions that grew more violent with each second. Horns blared, brakes screamed, and the once steady flow of cars twisted into a tangled mess of wreckage. The chain reaction was immediate and merciless. A semi-truck jackknifed, blocking both westbound lanes and leaving drivers with nowhere to go. Smoke began to rise as engines overheated and metal crumpled against metal. Some drivers slammed their doors open, desperate to escape the growing pileup, while others were pinned in place, unable to move. The air filled with the smell of burnt rubber and gasoline, a warning of fires ready to ignite. Amid the confusion, more gunfire erupted. This time, it was unmistakable. Drivers ducked low, crawling beneath seats or abandoning vehicles altogether. Emergency calls flooded in at once. Dispatchers struggled to piece together what was happening as terrified voices shouted about gunshots, explosions, and a massive crash on the highway. Witnesses described seeing flashes from the tree line near an old maintenance shed, but the shooter remained hidden from sight. From his vantage point, he continued firing, choosing targets with precision. Every shot added to the chaos, forcing more collisions and trapping more victims in the growing scene of destruction. For the people trapped on the highway, There was no sense of direction. Some tried to run across lanes, dodging between wrecks, while others clutched their children and crouched behind vehicles, praying for safety. The suddenness of the attack left no time to think, no time to act. Panic had taken full control. By the time the first sirens echoed in the distance, the highway had already transformed into a battlefield. Smoke curled upward in thick black plumes, broken glass littered the pavement, and bodies lay scattered among the wreckage. What had begun as an ordinary morning commute was now a nightmare of violence, confusion, and fear, the kind of moment that would burn into memory forever. When the first state troopers reached the scene, their body cams captured the rawest and most haunting images of the unfolding disaster. The footage opened with blinding red and blue lights flashing against a backdrop of rising smoke. The sound was almost unbearable. Sirens wailed, alarms blared from crushed vehicles, and cries for help echoed through the chaos. Officers rushed forward, weaving through twisted metal and shattered glass, their boots crunching against debris scattered across the asphalt. Every movement was frantic yet deliberate, every second precious as they tried to reach the injured. One bodycam showed an officer pulling a driver from a car that was moments away from catching fire, dragging them across broken concrete while gunshots cracked in the distance. Another recorded the desperate attempts to calm a panicked child trapped in the back seat of a minivan. The footage was filled with confusion and terror, but it also revealed moments of extraordinary bravery. Civilians, despite their fear, joined officers in pulling strangers from wreckage, carrying the wounded to safer ground, and shielding loved ones from incoming fire. The highway had become an open war zone, and survival was the only goal. Amid the rescue attempts, the threat remained. More gunfire rang out, forcing officers to duck behind vehicles while still trying to reach those who were trapped. A chilling clip from one bodycam showed a shadowy figure moving across an overpass, rifle in hand, scanning for new targets. His movements were calm and calculated, a stark contrast to the chaos below. The troopers shouted warnings, their voices drowned out by the roar of flames and the crack of gunshots. The attacker was mobile, unpredictable, and seemed to vanish after every shot, leaving officers unsure of where to focus their defense. What made the footage most disturbing was the realization that the shooter was not acting in haste. He had the advantage of position, knowledge of the terrain, and complete control over the unfolding disaster. Every time officers advanced, he shifted angles, forcing them back into defensive positions. Yet even in the face of this danger, the cameras recorded resilience. Officers shielded the injured with their own bodies. Medics sprinted into the kill zone without hesitation, and ordinary citizens displayed courage that would later be praised nationwide. The bodycam footage, once released to the public, revealed more than chaos. It showed the thin line between order and collapse, between life and death. It was proof of a community's determination to fight back, even as the attacker tightened his grip on the highway. The arrival of reinforcements shifted the scale of the operation, but it also intensified the danger. Dozens of patrol cars sealed off the highway's exits, cutting off any escape routes for the attacker. Helicopters thundered above, their searchlights sweeping across the smoking wreckage as thermal imaging scanned for movement in the tree line. Officers formed tactical units, advancing cautiously between wrecked vehicles while still aiding the injured. The highway, once a place of routine travel, had become a fortified zone where every sound carried the weight of threat. Yet the gunman adapted quickly. He moved with precision, slipping through blind spots, firing from new angles, and then disappearing before anyone could lock onto his location. Investigators later discovered how familiar he was with the terrain. He had memorized the wooded areas, drainage tunnels, and abandoned service paths that surrounded the highway. Each burst of gunfire seemed designed to lure officers into traps, forcing them to split their attention between saving lives and neutralizing the threat. For hours, the tension grew. Every time troopers thought they had cornered him, he resurfaced somewhere else, creating the illusion of multiple shooters. The confusion only amplified the fear among both responders and civilians still trapped in the wreckage. The danger escalated when an explosives unit discovered a chilling surprise near the maintenance shed, believed to be the shooter's first position. Hidden in the grass were several crude but powerful devices, each rigged to detonate with devastating force. Had they gone off during the initial panic, the number of casualties would have been far higher. The discovery revealed the full extent of his plan. He had not come only to fire shots. He intended to stage a massacre of overwhelming scale, one that would cripple the highway and paralyze the state. By nightfall, the scene had expanded far beyond the crash site. Nearby neighborhoods went on high alert as authorities warned residents to stay inside and lock their doors. Schools and businesses closed early, and local shelters prepared for possible evacuations. Teams swept abandoned barns, storage units, and wooded trails, convinced the attacker had melted into the landscape. The longer he evaded capture, the more unsettling the reality became. He was not improvising. He was executing a design he had refined for months. The I-96 tragedy was no longer confined to the highway. It was now a threat spreading outward, dragging entire communities into its shadow. At first light, the search converged on an abandoned factory less than 2 miles from the highway. The crumbling building had been empty for years, its broken windows and rusted doors offering the perfect hiding place. Tactical teams moved in cautiously, their body cams recording every step through the dark, hollow corridors. The silence inside was heavy, broken only by the echo of boots and the creak of shifting metal. What they found scattered across the floor confirmed their worst fears. Maps of the highway were pinned to the walls, marked with circles and arrows showing traffic flow at different times of day. Nearby were handwritten notes filled with disturbing rants about destruction, obsession, and a desire to create fear on a massive scale. It was clear that the attack on I-96 had been only the first part of something larger. The shooter was still inside, armed and waiting. The initial exchange of gunfire shook the factory walls, sending dust and debris raining down from the rafters. Officers took cover behind rusted machinery, their flashlights cutting through the shadows as bullets ricocheted off concrete pillars. The attacker fought with precision, moving quickly from one corner to another, forcing troopers into a tense standoff. Every second was dangerous, every decision critical. Then, in a desperate attempt to end the confrontation on his own terms, he tried to detonate another explosive device. The blast was only partial, filling the room with smoke and shrapnel, injuring him but not disabling the officers. The chaos that followed gave law enforcement their opening. Within minutes, the gunfire ceased, and the factory was secured. What remained was a grim aftermath. The highway still lay in ruins, a graveyard of burned vehicles and shattered glass. Families mourned loved ones lost in the attack, while survivors struggled to process the trauma of being caught in the crossfire. The bodycam footage from the final raid was later reviewed frame by frame, each image capturing the moment when fear and resolve collided. The gunman had planned to devastate, but in the end, his actions revealed both the fragility and the resilience of the community he tried to break. The I-96 Mass Casualty Incident would go down as one of the darkest events in the state's history. It became a permanent reminder of how one man's obsession with violence could shatter ordinary lives in an instant, and how the courage of strangers, officers, medics, and civilians alike stood as the only defense against chaos. It was not just a story of loss, but also of defiance in the face of terror.